Wagers is back this week, and we roll through Thanksgiving. We are stuffed full of football in our Thanksgiving feast, and we have a bet to pay off. Speaking of that,
we certainly do, and I can smell them. They are steamed. They are ready. Can everybody see that?
Your least favorite food. And how about green beans for the green Michigan State Spartans, who you picked to cover that 18, and they didn't quite get it done. We'll get into that, Daniel. First of all, happy December. We're almost there. We're recording this on the final day of November, but boy, do we have a lot to get to today. And, man, Thanksgiving football did not disappoint. A lot of upsets last week.
And a lot of eyeballs, too. I mean, going back to some of the television numbers, we do work in television as our full-time job. I mean, a lot of people were watching not only college, but NFL.
How about 42 million people?
Yes. I mean, incredible numbers.
Dallas-New York game.
And it just shows you the power of the Big Ten, the historic Big Ten, Ohio State, Michigan, Gus Johnson on the call.
Well, my ears were bleeding after listening to Gus, but 17 million people, not too bad. So let's get into the review of last week. And really, when you think about it, we didn't do that well between the two of us, Dan. Unfortunately, I went 3-6. You went 3-6.
Very tough week.
But the key win for myself was Penn State to cover that 18, and it was sort of a backdoor cover too, because pull yourself up on camera there. Show folks you've got to start eating. I want you to eat a couple of those right now.
Yep.
We picked our least favorite Thanksgiving side dish. You said green beans, and the loser of this had to eat them, and boy, it was by 1 point. So you have to just chow down on those all podcast long.
I was going to say they're dry. There's not a whole lot of flavor. It's literally just eating a stalk of green. Now, it says they're full of vitamin C.
Sort of like Iowa's offense.
Pretty plain, pretty vanilla, averaging 250 yards a game.
By the way, how bad do you have to be to have the Big Ten title on the line to choke it away to Nebraska, speaking of Iowa?
So many teams, and I don't remember this in years past. I've been following college football for 20-odd years, but so many teams salted away very good seasons.
Did you salt those green beans, by the way?
I did salt. I gave myself a little bit of salt, but whether it's Iowa, who blew it,
big
whether
time.
It's Ole Miss.
Now let me make a point about Iowa, though. That may be the best thing to happen to them, because hopefully now Kirk Ferentz can't hide behind the fact that they went to the Big Ten title game. He can fire his son, and they can move on, and he can try to bring in an offensive coordinator.
Will he do it?
Maybe ship him off to the NFL is the better way. Another game I want to point out, and then I'll get back to your comment. The LSU game, which I had as a totally lock pick. I mean, what happened there?
Is the quarterback healthy? I heard some rumblings that maybe he's not 100%, but even still, the defense, a Brian Kelly defense that just did not play well.
No, against a 4-win team. I mean,
right.
It was really bizarre. And then lastly, you had mentioned about Lane Kiffin.
Mm-hmm.
Still the Ole Miss coach, by the way.
Totally derailed. Now, I think some of that could be the distractions.
Absolutely.
Was he going to coach? Was he not going to coach? Where is his assistants going? All that fun stuff.
The last 3 games, I mean, they did not really show up. So our overall records now, I'm not happy, because we're both now in the losing column for the season. This is what happens when you pick 9 games a week. And the other thing that happens, too, is when you pick them on Wednesdays, sometimes the numbers change and, the wonky things happen. I don't want to make excuses, but I will. 60 and 65
I'm
for
happy
me.
to follow you with that.
62 and 63 for you. So we're going to do our best. We've got a full slate of games this week. Probably the last week we have a full slate, and we are going to get into that here in just a bit. So as Dan pays off his green bean bet, let's talk about the college football rankings.
By the way, there's plenty to share.
If anybody wants some. I will say that the rankings this week were not that surprising. You've got Georgia at number 1. Some people wanted to make an argument that Michigan maybe should have leapfrogged them. Michigan has the best win on the season, don't they?
You would think.
Yeah.
I mean, I still don't understand totally the love fest for Georgia when at times they have not looked like a complete team.
Well, and I think that'll all be bared out in the playoffs. Can they do it? TCU is 3, and then USC sneaking into the number 4th spot. Ohio State at 5. Bama is at 6. They are ahead of Tennessee, which has rubbed some Tennessee fans the wrong way. I get it. Don't get blown out against an inferior team. That's the message here. And then there's a good old Penn State sitting at number 8, which helps to elevate both Michigan and Ohio State. A couple of interesting scenarios here going into championship weekend. I mean, I think the 4 teams are set. Let me ask you a couple of questions. If TCU loses on Saturday, are they out, or are they still in? They would only have 1 loss.
I think it all depends on how you lose. Mm-hmm. The committee really looks at that.
Right.
A one-loss team obviously would be the same par as USC.
Yeah, right.
assuming USC takes care of business. But I think TCU is in danger.
If they lose.
If they lose, I think the Big 12 is not the same as, say,
Yeah, but I got to tell you,
SEC,
they
Big
are a
10.
competitive league. They played a lot of ranked teams. I don't know. I mean, and there's not that many one-loss teams sitting there. I'm not so sure that they're in jeopardy, especially if it's a close game. What about if USC loses? Then I think they're out.
They're out.
And then I think Ohio State is in.
It's either Ohio State or Alabama.
Well, but
And
Alabama,
to me, has the stronger resume.
I disagree. Who have they beaten?
Ooh.
I don't think they have. First of all, they have 2 losses, and they've never put in a 2-loss team in the playoff. Ask Penn State about that. Then, Ohio State does have a win over Penn State, the number 8 team in the land.
Well, I do agree with that. Mr. Shiner, you were about to bring up the point I was going to say.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing about Bama is the 2 losses they have are by a combined total of 3 points, whereas these other teams have had a blowout on their resume.
They do, but
Yeah.
again, I will
But
ask who is Bama's best win?
Well, and that's where I think you start getting the SEC bias a little bit. Maybe the prominence with the name recognition. I mean, everybody still I think is waiting for Bama to be this like collapsing team when they're still a 2-loss team by 3 points. They're
Yeah.
still one of the big dogs in the
They
hunt
are.
here.
Tim Brando calls these playoff privileged teams, which
Well, you've earned
I
that
totally get
privilege,
it.
though.
I
I mean,
totally get
didn't
it.
you?
to some extent you do, but I think his point too is if TCU gets that loss and they get knocked out, why shouldn't they be forgiven for that? Especially because it's an extra game that, basically they have to play for being good, by the way.
I mean, just the fact that they're in this conversation, I think, says a lot.
So
I was
go
gonna say,
ahead.
Some people
Yeah.
are going to bring that same thing up for USC if they end up losing as well.
Well, but
You
they
know?
would have 2 losses then. And I know,
True.
they had to play that extra game.
But you had to play
both
that
losses
extra
would
game
be
is
to
what-
the same team, by the
Correct.
way.
You're almost getting, like penalized for making it to a conference championship game, and then Ohio State wouldn't have to have that extra
Correct.
play. I mean, there's a lot of different. That's why I want to be in the room and see how they talk about this.
And this
stuff.
was the year, too, where Alabama did not have a strong out-of-conference schedule. So that
No, they
also,
didn't. And again, though, if anybody has actually watched Alabama play, they haven't looked as strong as they have in other years. They don't have an elite wide receiver. Their defense doesn't look like it is that same style of elite Nick Saban defense that we're used to. I think they are vulnerable, hence the 2 in the loss column, and they prove that. But as we move forward into this weekend with the championship games, any shakeups that you see happening, or did we just lay it all out? I mean, if Georgia loses, they're in. Still, I would think, right? If Michigan loses, they're in.
well,
They have 2 top 10 wins.
I know, but you lose against Purdue.
I know
That could hurt.
It could, but they listen.
But look at who Purdue's beat this year. They've had some quality wins
Yes.
this year.
And I look at still that they would only have the issue is there's not in many other years there has been 4 or 5 one-loss teams just kind of sitting
Yep.
there. And then I think you have this discussion. I mean, after Ohio State, everybody else has 2 losses. Where Michigan
And no 2-loss team has ever made it. We
correct.
State
So
that.
yeah, you have to state that. So that's what I mean. If Michigan loses to Purdue, yeah, it stinks, but they're still only a 1-loss team. TCU, same deal. I think if USC loses, you got to keep an eye on that. I do think they view the Pac-12 as a weaker conference, even though my argument stands just like with the Big 12. USC has many wins over ranked teams, and Ohio State is really the only team that I think could slip back in there if USC loses. I don't think that this weekend offers that much drama, to be quite frank. Do you guys? I just don't see
Well,
it.
I can say the selection committee hopes that the top 4 teams all win out, so they don't have to explain
Correct.
why they're doing this as well.
I mean-
I mean that's a big part of it.
Does
here.
anybody love Boo Corrigan though? First of all, I would love to have the name Boo.
Kind of
You
a
got
target on
Thack,
his back.
That's close
He
enough,
does,
right?
Thack, yeah, but Boo, doesn't he just seem like the type of guy you want to have dinner with and
Yeah.
maybe a glass of wine and
Yeah.
just ask him these questions
But
and get him talking
He
about
almost
it?
sounds exhausted when he goes through the
He does.
repetition of why these teams are where they are.
Yeah.
I just think it is sort of a thankless job. This year proves the point.
Well,
of
they
the,
just-
the,
they-
12-team playoff.
They
would
trot
be
somebody
tremendous.
out there to explain their reasoning. I wouldn't want the job. Reese Davis does as good of a job as he can to extract this information from him. It's kind of like the detective shining the light on the suspect, right? And Boo has to answer the these questions. Only in college football, by the way, do grown men have these names. And he's not even a coach, but Boo Corrigan of the selection committee is great. All right, let's talk about the number 18 Penn State. Where do you think their bowl destination is? There's several. There's several
scenarios.
There's several scenarios. Now, let me just lay out the most likely scenario, which isn't the greatest. First of all, making any New Year's Six bowl game is significant for the program. For James Franklin to come back this year, win 10 games, have a stacked freshman class, sets up nicely for the future of the program. Pat Kraft, the AD, everything's lining up very nicely.
Nice payday.
Things are going in a much more positive direction. But if it is the Cotton Bowl against, say, a Tulane, that is, I think a lot of Penn State fans would be disappointed by that because that is a no-win situation, guys. It's a nice bowl to be in. You're probably going to have some opt-outs. But if you beat Tulane, you're not going to be given any credit for it. And then if Tulane beats you, that's not how you want to end your season.
No.
So I think the hope would be perhaps we get into a better bowl. There was some talk of an Orange Bowl, although I just don't see that happening because of where Alabama sits. However, explain the Rose Bowl scenario here.
I'm not sure. I totally get it, but Kirk Herbstreit actually said it on live television.
On the show on Tuesday night. You're right.
He said because of the recency bias of Ohio State being in the Rose Bowl,
Correct.
the selection committee for the Rose Bowl, and I guess there's now a timeline that they have to pick this.
Well, they're going to pick it on Sunday after all the conference games. They tend to base it on the rankings. So the next highest Big Ten team that isn't in the playoff goes to the Rose Bowl. But they don't have to do it that way.
Correct.
If they believe that the next team gives them a better matchup or a better fan experience. And what we mean by that is Ohio State certainly is always of the mentality it's playoff or bust. They've been to the Rose Bowl 2 times in the last 4 years.
Correct.
Are their fans going to travel there?
It's a great question.
Are they going to be a little bit Rose Bowled out? And meanwhile, Penn State has not been there since 2016.
It would lead to a lot of excitement.
We know the Nittany Lions travel well. Certainly, I think Penn State's fan base would be much more up for an appearance in Pasadena than Ohio State's fan base.
And who would it be against? Potentially Utah, I guess.
It would be
Or USC.
It would be
depending on who ends up winning out.
Correct. If Utah wins, they go to the Rose Bowl because they win the Pac-12.
Okay.
If
And they can't backdoor into
correct.
the
If
playoff at all.
USC wins, then I think it's the next highest ranked team could be Washington. So there's still some some things to play for and some quirky scenarios to play out. But ultimately, that is one to watch because if Penn State could end this season in the Rose Bowl, that would be a huge success. I think what we have to hope for is not to put it in the Rose Bowl committee's hands. I personally feel like they would pick Ohio State anyway.
I
think
agree.
what we have to root for is a USC loss to get Ohio State into the playoff, and then we're automatically going to the Rose
Be a
Bowl.
lot of fun.
Yeah,
It would be a lot of fun.
It would be interesting if it does play out against Tulane, kind of similar to when Penn State played Memphis a
Right.
couple of years back. And you know what? They dominated that game. And unless you have a dominating performance like that, it does kind of feel like, oh, yeah,
It's a sour
you're
taste.
losing
Yep.
the end of the season.
100%. And so that's the deal. Let's talk coaching
Well,
carousel.
At one point, I'll make about that too. If they do make the Rose Bowl, someone like Jair Brown might say, "I'll play."
Yeah, no, I think you're right, and that just makes it because it's still the granddaddy of them all, at least for 1 or 2 more years. Coaching carousel, lots of hirings and firings to discuss. Nebraska has its man coming in from the Carolina Panthers, Matt Rule, who is a Penn Stater, by the way. The thought process here was that he wanted to return to the Big Ten. Is this Nebraska's last shot?
Yes.
It's almost got to be. And I think they couldn't have found anyone other than Rule that could really give them that next shot. I mean, who's going to want to go to Nebraska at this point?
He is a known program builder, and I still think Nebraska has more resources in place than a Baylor or a Temple. They have NIL money. They've got a loyal fan base. I think that he can recruit with the transfer portal now.
That's the key.
It does really help.
Yes.
And that may be why, you know how I mentioned we're not seeing as many one-loss teams? All of this may be playing into that to help at least bring about some parity to this sport we all love that doesn't have a lot of it. So I think that would be great.
Well, and let's face it too, these kids flock to guys with NFL experience, and that's you can't measure that.
No, you can't, and or at least guys that put people in the league. Everything's connected, and yeah, the joke is he runs an NFL franchise into the ground and then gets paid $9 million to coach Nebraska. But at the end of the day, a lot of college coaches have failed in the NFL. It's pretty easy to fail in the NFL, but I think
he's a quarterback, and he didn't.
I think Saban, Nick Saban. That's a prime example, and so Spurrier. A lot of people have failed. And Pete Carroll did it first.
Yeah.
There's many names, but I think it's a good fit. And most importantly, I want to save my comment after we talk about the next guy, and that is Luke Fickell, Wisconsin coming out of nowhere, bringing in the Cincinnati coach. What do you think of this hire?
It's huge because I think Wisconsin saw them falling behind the pack. I mean, their offense truly isn't that much better than Iowa.
No.
In a very winnable Big Ten West, it was an embarrassment this year.
Yeah, they should be dominating the West,
Right.
and they haven't been the last couple of years. And I think that's a good matchup and one more shot for them to maybe get back to where they were.
And he's a Big Ten guy, too. So the 2 points we want to make about these hires, I mean, these are big names and big gets for programs that traditionally don't necessarily have the biggest stars or names attached to their head coaches, at least not in the last 20 years. Now, you're talking about Big Ten TV money. They have the money to spend. They know they have to spend it on football. You also have another factor. Divisions are going away. They can't just sit there and say, we're going to hire a guy that can win the Big Ten West. They have to hire a guy that can win the Big Ten. Now, when we expand to 12 teams, here's another point. You also don't need to win the Big Ten to be in the playoffs.
That's right.
Yeah. I would suggest you need to be top 3 or top 4. I think in the Big Ten and the SEC, they could each get 3 or 4 teams in. You don't need to do it every year at a school like Nebraska or Wisconsin either. But I think those guys, and this is where it's going to get tougher for teams like Penn State, Ohio State, Michigan.
Correct.
You're going to have tougher outs. Now, that makes for some very competitive football. You don't need to win every game anymore soon when the playoff expands.
And I'll love when that day comes.
Yeah, me too, because you're not going to be biting your nails over every single play of every single game. But you're still going to need to win most of them, which is great. I don't think it's going to reduce the regular season that much, but this is what the Big Ten has become. These programs can afford to go out and get names. How competitive is this going to be?
I think it's huge. And the question is, are we done? Couldn't you see a David Shaw come to a Big Ten school?
No.
Really?
I think he's done. I think David Shaw will go into a team. I do. Because I think David Shaw, by resigning, knows his place, his time is done. And what I mean by that is, I think he was a great fit at Stanford, but we have transitioned into a new era, fellas. And the NIL and the transfer portal, a very cerebral guy like David Shaw, I don't think he's cut out for it. I think he would make a great analyst.
Okay.
Maybe he goes and becomes an analyst for another head coach or a TV analyst. I just don't see him getting back into the head coaching game. It hasn't worked for 3 or 4 years. Stanford's fallen behind, and I don't see him wanting to put up with that type of stuff.
Well, let me pose a question to both of you. Who's the next program to hire a big guy? I mean, there's a few out there I can think of. The Iowas, the Indianas of the world.
Well,
I mean,
let's talk about what about Indiana now. I think Tom Allen is going to come back at least for a year to try to get it right. But what's to stop Indiana from going out to get it? Now, they're a basketball school, but again, they have TV money.
They all do.
They can't just sit on it, right?
Well, and you need that TV money to pay off all these coaches that you're letting go all the time now. I mean,
yeah,
you notice the programs that are
assistants
doing
too.
well are
Correct.
the ones that aren't paying for 3 or 4 coaches right now, where there are quite a few that are.
Yeah. Speaking of that, Auburn. And you
Great
talk
transition.
about that. Thank you for
Do
that,
they print money down
Mr.
there
Shiner.
like they do
They
with toilet
must.
paper over
Well,
the trees?
I think they went out and got their man. It was not Lane Kiffin after all. He signed with Ole Miss. I think there was some interest there. I'm not sure how that fell apart. But then they go out and they get Hugh Freeze. Now, to me, this is the perfect fit. He's a Gus Malzahn guy. Gus Malzahn had success at Auburn. Hugh Freeze. What is the number one job of the Auburn coach?
Win.
But specifically,
Beat Bama.
and even more specifically right now, beat Saban.
Yep.
Yeah.
Who has beaten Saban twice?
War Eagle.
Gus Malzahn and Hugh Freeze when he was at Ole Miss.
Yeah.
Now, I know Hugh comes with a lot of baggage, right? He had the NCAA sanctions. He had his happy phone. And I get all of that. But
He's giving up his social media accounts. He's letting someone else run it. There's a start.
I wish I could do that. we need people to run ours, not for those reasons, just because I'm lazy. But I also think that when you look at Hugh Freeze, can we stop pretending? And this is where, listen, I want this to be about the a student athlete as much as anybody. But again, what did I just say about
It's
David?
over.
What did I just say about David Shaw? We can pretend that we could say this guy is, going to be the gentleman to lead our program and mold these young men. Let's stop pretending. We want a man that can win football games.
Right.
Okay.
We want someone to make the boosters
as long
happy.
as he's not, Now, by the way, and let's say this: if Hugh Freeze screws up again,
It's done.
he's done, and he knows that. This is his last shot. But my point is, there's going to be some fans that don't like the hire because of his past. I get it. But it's a good fit from a football standpoint, and if you want to win football games, I think Hugh Freeze will be successful. And if he's not winning football games, guess what?
He'll be gone too.
He'll be gone too.
Yep.
Or if he screws up again, he's gone.
Yep.
So I think that, he's the guy to beat Nick Saban. And lastly, Georgia Tech hires Brent Key, their interim. There was some mutual interest from Willie Fritz of Tulane, which I had to change a pick coming up with that. But he certainly got the Yellow Jackets to actually win some football games.
Play good football.
Something that they haven't
Yeah.
done in a while, right? How are those beans tasting over there?
I'm about halfway done.
Yeah. You're doing really good, really well.
I'm sure
Congratulations.
the visual of me eating these things is not the best for our audience, but
Well,
Well,
no, I think that's why they tune in. I think they tune in to see the silly
The outrageous stuff we
nonsense
do.
that we come up with. Is there any stopping? We're going to shift now over to the Eagles. We have to do a little bit of Eagles talk. Is there any stopping the Philadelphia Eagles at 10-1? They haven't looked great the last few weeks, but boy, oh boy, they're still finding ways to win games.
Well, I think the biggest thing that can hurt the Eagles, injuries.
Yep,
And
injury bug.
obviously it's
Yep.
already starting to take its toll a little bit with losing C.J. Gardner-Johnson.
When's Goddard coming back?
I believe in the next 2 or 3 games
Yep.
he's eligible. They open up that 21-day window. Now, I did just see today that Jordan Davis's 21-day practice window was just open. So that's
boom, that's big.
that's nice with Derrick Henry coming to town here
Right.
soon. Hopefully we get him on the practice
Well-
field and playing before that. But obviously they've shored up the
right. I
holes
was going to say
here
it's not
with-
as desperate as it
as
was, which is good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But as long as they can stay healthy, I think it's
Well, and Jalen
only them
Hurts-
that can beat themselves.
Jalen
you know?
Hurts has taken some shots. I mean, there's a couple plays where I'm like, oh boy, that's a shot to the ribs. Oh boy, that's a shot to his arm or whatever. You just hope he stays healthy because you saw last year once he had his ankle thing, he wasn't quite the same guy. But he is a man on a mission.
Yeah.
I mean, to have an Eagles quarterback playing at an MVP level, it's just fun.
Well, it is, but again, the schedule does not get any easier. They have to now, of course, go and play the Titans.
At home,
not go.
thankfully. Right.
Yeah, they're at home for that one, which is an interesting one. Then the Giants twice. Dallas again on Christmas Eve, and then Chicago and New Orleans, which again, hopefully they're able to take care of business. It would just be nice to get to those 12 wins, try to lock up a first round. By the schedule, I think we
Give
can
the guys
do that.
some rest.
Yeah.
But again, right now, they are still the best team in football, with injuries or not, right?
I agree. And
Most complete, probably. You know.
I was going to say, from a depth perspective, I've never felt better. I mean, even Reed Blankenship, who was a undrafted free
Yeah,
agent.
how about that story?
That's a great story, and he
Just
played
phenomenal.
his butt off.
Yeah,
Yeah.
What I mean, Sirianni's
Hey,
just
next man up.
he's doing. They clearly are responding to his coaching too. and I
Yeah, they
think
have a
that's
good
important.
culture, which I think is
Bingo.
that's big. I want to, before we leave the NFL thoughts here, Trent Dilfer becoming a head coach for UAB. That's official as of this morning.
Oh,
Good
wow.
point. We had talked about the coaching carousel. I'm glad you brought that up. What do you make of that? I mean, he hasn't really coached anywhere before.
He's
No.
been coaching high school for a couple of years now.
Yeah, but
at a
you're right.
top
He does-
level
he-
high school
I know
too.
he
I
does
mean,
talk-
like
right. He- he
He
national.
talks about that. He does
Yeah.
talk about that.
And he has the Elite 11 as well, so he knows
Right.
all these quarterbacks coming in, maybe getting
Well,
some blue chippers to a
all about
smaller
but he
school.
hasn't. But he hasn't coached
You
in
know?
college before. Will
That's
all of
true.
this translate? Maybe more colleges should hire high school coaches. I don't know. I mean,
Look
these
at
are
look at
things to.
Dion. I mean,
Yeah.
Dion to Jackson State. It's unconventional.
He has a job offer out there. Right
He
now.
does with the Colorado Buffaloes.
Yeah, not sure that's a good fit, but if I'm Colorado, hey,
You throw it out there.
you
see
throw
what
it out
happens.
there. We need to move on now to our games of the week. So cue it up.
Games of the week.
not all of these have weather to talk about, but we do have some intrigue here, and that would be the Pac-12 title game. That is Friday night at 8 o'clock, USC and Utah. This is the rematch. Utah dealt USC their only loss. Now, that was an emotional night. They had honored some of their fallen players. It was at Rice-Eccles Stadium, USC on the road. This is in Vegas, baby. It's a neutral site, but don't you just get the sense? So when we look at this and then our next game, which is really intriguing, that's where game day is going, the Big 12 title game. Both of those games, the lines are very close.
And I think they are going to be the best games of the weekend.
I do, but if you look at those lines, I just have a feeling one of those teams is going to lose.
I think so too.
Now,
it'll be fun if they both did.
I'm not sure which one, but I think one of them could lose. And then you've got, from an intrigue standpoint, and I wrote this in the column, which you can find at abc27.com. Again, just a reminder, our YouTube channel at ABC27 News, you can stream us there, and you can get us wherever you get your podcasts. But this game, you talk about a snooze fest. Clemson, North Carolina, both teams limping in to a sterile, soulless NFL stadium. There's not going to be anybody there. Why would anybody go? They both lost to their arch rival last week.
They did.
They are playing for absolutely nothing. I mean, it's just going to be a disaster. So from that standpoint, this game is really, really tough to pick.
Well, but Dabo loves his family. I mean, it's all about the Clemson family, and we don't invite anybody from the transfer portal into this family.
Well, maybe they should have.
I think they should have.
Maybe they should have a quarterback. Okay, and then we round it out with a couple of NFL stops. We go to Philadelphia because I think that's a tough game to pick as the Titans come to town. And then, Dan, this game does have some weather with it. I think the West Coast, maybe not the best coast this weekend because we could be talking about some rain. And that game, by the way, right there, Miami at San Francisco, has some playoff implications big time.
It certainly does. And everyone keeps hyping. I talk about this in the column. People love the 49ers. The experts love the 49ers. Show it to me.
Yeah, I mean, listen, they have a winning record. We could have some weather in Charlotte for the Bank of America game. That's a Bank of America Stadium, the ACC title game in Charlotte,
I mean, it's pretty much a home game for the Tar Heels.
It is, but again, how many people are actually going to show up, especially if there are some showers? This is a night game at Bank of America Stadium. Who cares?
Well, the North Carolina fan base may surprise some people because, again, it's not like they've had a long history of success.
True, and to win an ACC title for them does mean something.
Right.
Dreary. I can be sold on that. And by the way, I wouldn't mind seeing Drake May in person. I mean, you talk about a guy that had an outside shot at the Heisman until they choked a couple of games away at the end of the year.
Correct.
That guy can play football, and I think he's got plenty of years left.
I think so, too.
So now it could be windy here. This is an interesting one because Clemson's favored by a touchdown. I think it could be tighter than that, though.
I think it could be certainly tighter than that. Weather considered, plus the anemic offense of Clemson at times. I mean, it's brutal to watch.
What about Philadelphia on Sunday?
Well, the good news is the rain from Saturday moves out, but I am concerned at times that there could be a little bit more of a breeze because of the cooler air moving in.
I'm seeing that in some of the model forecasts, too, that I think Sunday could be downright breezy. And, of course, this game at 1 o'clock, a chillier day, too.
Chilly, definitely feeling like December as we move into the first weekend of December. Temperatures in the 40s for tailgating. I know some folks going to this game, so be prepared, bundle up, and I'm sure there'll be some liquid courage to keep everybody warm.
Not in Philadelphia.
Never.
The winds, I don't think they'll be much of a factor here at the Titans game there and the Eagles game on Sunday. But again, in the West Coast, that is an area I think we have to.
This is the interesting one.
Yeah, because there's an area of low pressure that's going to slam Santa Clara with some wet weather here on Sunday. In terms of how long this persists, again, this is a game that's on at 4 o'clock Eastern time. So there you can see. I think it could be a wet one throughout the Dolphins-Chargers game. It is an outdoor stadium at Levi's Stadium. Temperatures will be in the 50s. Not a concern there, but it's going to be messy. And then we've got a bit of a breeze too, Daniel.
Something
off
to
the
certainly
coast.
Pay attention to. And, again, I want to see this 49ers offense take charge. And the same thing goes for the Dolphins. I mean, they had such a hot start to the season before Tua's issues.
Yeah.
It could be very interesting.
I think so, too. So let's get to our games of the week and the picks. And we differ on some of these. I tell you what, though, I think this is where I was shocked to see that USC was only a slight favorite.
Me too.
I believe they're a 3-point favorite. I see you're going to take them, but I think they're going to get punched in the mouth. I like the physicality of Utah. I think this is where we see our surprise. Kyle Whittingham has a way of getting his guys up for games like this because I'll tell you what, they know if they win that game, they're going to Pasadena, and they have bragging rights for the second year in a row to go out there and be in that Rose Bowl. I take Utah right here for the upset.
Well, my friend, I would agree with all those points, but there's also a lot on the line for USC. Heisman candidate, and probably winner right now, Caleb Williams, unless he falls on his face. That's up for grabs. Plus the playoff spot. I would think USC finds a way to win. I don't think they lose twice to this Utah team.
All good reasonings there. We're going to have to see how that one plays out. I told you before, I love picking Kansas State in a spot like this, but I also said I'm done going against TCU this year. I think they complete the sweep. They go 13-0, and they can cover the 2.5 points.
A lot of pressure on the Horned Frogs, but 2.5 points, small enough. I think they can do it. If they do it, they're one game and done in the playoff, but it'll be a fun ride.
And how about this game? You're going against your boy Mac Brown here, taking Clemson to cover that spread.
I am, only because North Carolina's concerns here coming into the game of losing games they shouldn't. Clemson, I think, still, for whatever reason, their culture, they find a way to win, and this has to build for next year.
They want to win the ACC.
Exactly.
But I do think, and by the way, I'm not picking North Carolina to win here. I am just picking them to cover. I think it's going to be a shootout. I think it comes down to one of those last plays. North Carolina has been in a lot of those. I think Dabo probably gets it done, but I do think it's tight. We both are not on the Eagles this week. This is one of those games where I do love the Titans, but they've let me down recently. I like their running game. I think the Eagles have some issues there in terms of their defense, especially with Derrick Henry coming in. But they're at home. They haven't gotten the cover for me the last few weeks. So I'm going to keep, what's the phrase? I'm going to keep going back to that well because at some point they're going to do it. 5 points, this number's come down a bit. I think they can cover by a touchdown. I like the Eagles here to get it done at home.
This is the game I've circled as one of their losses on the season. I'm going to stay consistent and pick the Titans to cover and win.
Oh, wow, but you didn't put money line.
No, I didn't, but I think the Titans cover. I think this is a lower scoring game than many people think.
They are a team that may be built to beat the Eagles team, especially from that Derrick Henry
time
running
of possession
standpoint.
I mean, you go back to the Commanders game. That's the recipe right now to beat the Eagles.
We're both picking the 49ers to cover. This is just one of those games. I don't like cross-country trips. I don't think teams do well with that. Their body clocks are off.
Coach.
Their practice schedules are off. Now, I think the Dolphins are very good, but I think the 49ers, and the 49ers know, too, they want to stay atop that division. I think the 49ers get it done on the West Coast. Now, that leads us into our next segment, one of our classics. Here we go, Under the Radar.
Under the Radar.
It's the Sun Belt Fun Belt again.
I love the Fun Belt.
A game nobody's talking about, but it's Coastal Carolina versus Troy. Troy, a very good team. We haven't talked about much this year on the podcast. The Troy Trojans, they're favored by 8.5. Now, this is interesting, too. This has come down from 10 points.
I was going to say,
and I'm still trying to get information. We don't know yet whether the star quarterback, Grayson McCall from Coastal, is going to play in this game. They got whacked by your James Madison. What's their mascot?
Oh, now you put me on the spot.
Is it the Dukes? And so they whipped them good last week, 47-7. But that's because Grayson McCall didn't play.
Right, and so that's the X factor. I mean, will he play? Will he not play?
Yep.
The weather in Troy shouldn't be a factor, though.
No, it's not. It looks great, 61 degrees. But also, I believe is this at a neutral site, or is this one of those where they play at home?
I believe it was a home game. Maybe I'm incorrect about that.
No, let's see. But now, is it going to rain though? That's the other question. Yeah, they are playing. They are playing in Troy. This is one of those where the one with the better record does have an on-campus game, which I fully support, by the way.
Yeah, me too.
But they may be dealing with, of course, some showers later on. This game kicks at 3:30, so watch out for that.
There is a front, and we'll be watching that. But, I mean, warm, mild weather leading into that, it shouldn't be a huge factor. There could be some offense in this game.
And that, honestly, let's talk about that. There may be a little bit of a breeze with that front, so keep that in mind. I'm not sure this is a game, though, that's going to come down to field goals. To me, this game comes down to whether Grayson McCall plays or not. I don't know whether he's going to play. I am going to take Troy, though. To me, I think it's the only play here, given what Coastal did last week. I just don't know enough about them to like them. Now, Dan, what's interesting is this was at 10 points, and I know that you had said you felt like that was just too much.
Yeah.
Would you? This is, again, why we look at these lines throughout the week. You're going to take a money line for the pot here, but would you rather play an 8.5?
I think I would. I think I would rather.
Yeah, I think
play
that's
that.
a much better number.
But I do think, either way, if Grayson McCall doesn't play, Coastal Carolina's had a significant disadvantage.
I would absolutely agree with that, too. Okay, it's time for my picks.
Time now for Brett's Best.
You know I love me some Jeff Traylor and the UTSA Roadrunners. Did you see what the Roadrunners did last week, taking on UTEP?
They came all the way back,
down
didn't they?
31-10, and they won 34-31.
How about that?
How about that? This is a Friday night game, and I am taking the Roadrunners there to get that to cover. Actually, no. I think they will cover, but I'm nervous.
You're
and
nervous.
The reason I'm nervous
Seth
is
Luttrell, huh?
well, they played each other before this year. 31-27 was the score. Very tight game. That was back on the 22nd of October. I like the over here.
Okay. Interesting.
I like the
A lot
over
of
here.
points.
68.5. It is a lot of points. I think that they can do it. Then you've got Willie Fritz staying at Tulane. Now, earlier in the week when he was sniffing around Georgia Tech there, I said the Gus Bus was going to get this done, but I've changed it. They know Willie's staying. I think the distractions are gone. I think Tulane is the better team. I'm going to take them to do and cover the 3.5. This is a game, too, right here. This is a reason why I hate it when these lines change. I really like the Cowboys coming in. They're at home against Jeff Saturday. Jeff Saturday lost to 2 Pennsylvania teams back-to-back. The Cowboys were at 9.5 earlier in the week. Okay, I loved them at 9.5. 11.
That's healthy.
That's healthy. I'm not going to change the pick, though. When I go with something, I'm going to go with it. But I'd rather see it at 9.5.
It's almost
They
like you
can
have a
cover the
Cowboy
touchdown.
advisor.
Well, I don't have a Cowboy advisor. He would say to take the under, our guy George Richards over there. But I think the Cowboys can do it. And I wrote this in the column. Let's not overthink things. The Colts stink.
They
the
do.
Cowboys want to stay atop the NFC, battle with the Eagles. They want their shot. They're at home. They have really good players. You know, Dak Prescott, Micah Parsons.
Indeed.
I'm going to take them to cover. You're up.
All right, let's go to the Dandies.
It's Doppler Dandies.
So, looking for some weather impacts. We're talking about Sunday's game with New England, Buffalo. Again, that cold air moving through. This should say Thursday and Sunday, by the way.
Yes.
So, first, cold air coming through Thursday. Another shot by
That's
Sunday.
a fun Thursday night game.
It is a very fun Thursday night game, and historically, those games are low scoring. So I thought, okay, something to keep an eye on. Bailey Zappi, New England. Josh Allen, his arm issue in Buffalo. They're not scoring points at will like they have been. So, some things to mull over there. Then I go to the Jets and Vikings game in the Dome, but the Jets are so improved, and they made a quarterback change.
Yeah, can they do this on the road, though? Because the
Big test.
Vikings are one of those teams, too. They're 9-2, and you think, how are they 9-2? Some weeks they look a little off.
Agreed with that, my friend. So that's another reason why I picked that game. And then finally, just from a personal intrigue standpoint, Sunday game, breezy weather at MetLife Stadium. Can the Giants resurrect themselves, come up from the ashes, and beat a Commanders team that, again, played keep away against the Eagles?
Well, and won. I mean, that's the Eagles' only loss on the year. So we're going to now go into our picks. Let's hear it.
Final picks.
Now, we're still going to pick some games, of course, as we finish up the NFL season. We've got that Super Bowl pie in the face bet, but this is going to be our last full slate of games. Then we will introduce bowl games. We're going to have, I mean, the season isn't over.
There's plenty to talk about.
There's plenty to talk about, but this may be our last full slate. We'll see. We are going against one another in the Pac-12 title game. I love me some Kyle Whittingham.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah. You're going to take Lincoln Riley there.
I'm going to take Lincoln Riley and Caleb Williams. And, again, their run has been nothing short of remarkable. And, again, what can the transfer portal do for your program?
Yeah, and honestly, what can Lincoln Riley do for your program? TCU, we both like. We're going against. I'm taking Mac Brown.
Okay.
Go get him.
You're on the Mac attack, huh?
Hook 'em.
All right, hook 'em. But I will say, Clemson needs something to go right.
Yes.
There's a lot of talk. Is Dabo done? Is the dynasty over? I'm going to give him one benefit of the doubt here. Obviously, they can still put up some points. Depends on who plays a quarterback. Will Shipley is still one of the better running backs in college football.
Yeah.
And what have you told me all season long? Gene Chizik.
I have. I've said it also. And again, they did eventually choke away some games like I knew that they would.
Yes, they did.
I side wager on the Eagles game here. How about this? You don't believe in the Birds. You're not a real fan. I do believe in them to cover that 5 points. Loser of this bet buys the winner a Super Philly soft pretzel.
Ooh, I like that idea.
So we actually get to, how about this? We're reversing the trend. Now, we love food on this podcast.
Yes, we do.
But this time we'll reverse the trend and eat something good.
Yeah.
Loser pays.
I'm in.
Okay. 49ers we agree with. Troy, we agree with, and then my picks. Listen, that UTSA game in the Conference USA, the North Texas, man,
Points aplenty, huh?
Points aplenty. I think that they can do it. The Mean Green, they're gonna put up some points. That's a Friday night game in the Alamo Dome. Why not? Tulane, I'm back on the Willie Fritz bandwagon, and then I've got the Cowboys. That 11 number scares me. I had them at 9.5, and this is why it's important to check the lines, my friends,
Yes.
early in the week. If you can get some of these teams before the lines move, you're going to be golden. I would have absolutely put in on those Cowboys at 9.5.
Yeah, that's
11,
an interesting take.
11 scares me. I'm just going to tell you, I probably would not actually bet that number, but on this podcast,
You're going to stay consistent.
I will stay consistent and just say I think that they can do it, but it does scare me at 11. What about you?
Well, I'm going to take the Bills to cover and win
On the road.
against the Patriots. I think the Patriots are still a few pieces away.
Yeah, seems like it.
I think it's an interesting game, and I would not be surprised to see New England win at home. But the Bills need to go on a run too. They need to kind of pull themselves together. I'm going to take the Jets to cover. For whatever reason, they play good defense. They're scoring enough now that they made a quarterback change.
Jets, Jets.
I'm on board.
Okay.
Hopefully, Justin Robb is listening to this podcast.
He's our Jets guy. You know,
And-
we have some guys. Listen. Some people have guys in the desert. We have guys here in the newsroom.
We do, and it's a bevy of knowledge. Okay, so Commanders, they're favored in this game.
Yeah, and you're
against
taking
the
them.
Giants.
You
I'm
don't-
taking them.
something has told me you don't really like these Giants.
I
for
think it's
this year.
smoke and mirrors because
Yeah.
again, you can't tell me Daniel Jones is going to lead them to the playoffs and win games. I just don't see it. I don't, and I like what the Commanders are doing. They're relying on the running game. Taylor Heineke probably should have been the starting quarterback from the jump. The season could be totally different for Washington.
We know all about Mr. Carson Wentz. I will tell you that. Now, we want to hear from you. I just want to display. Can we put up the email there, Dan, for 1 second? You let us know, too, what you think. Weatherwagers@gmail.com. Give us some side wager ideas. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We're all over.
You know, we're pretty big dimwits here. We could have done a cheesesteak bet, too, at some point. So
Well,
that might have to be one of them.
That may have to be. Listen, here's the good news. There's plenty of Eagles bets ahead.
Yes.
I can guarantee that. We'll do the soft Super Philly pretzel next week. Loser buys. Winner gets to enjoy that during the podcast. We don't have to suffer through any more food.
Get some
Great
nacho
job.
cheese sauce with that.
Ooh, great job on those green beans.
Yeah, you
by the way.
know, I'm sucking down the vitamin C here. There's not a whole lot of flavor.
You're the Jolly Green
giant.
meteorologist.
Oh, over here.
Our special thanks, as always, to Dave Shiner for chiming in and for helping us bring this to you. He is our fantastic audio engineer, and we certainly thank you for listening. We're going to be back next week with a full slate. Can we get back on the winning track? Let's do it.
Let's do it. Winning records here all around this week.
All right, we're out. Have a great week, everybody.